Hi there, Eric here, your Learning Futurist. And in today's video, I'm circling back to an article I wrote about 2 years ago on the ethics of automating education. And I've been giving some more thought to artificial intelligence and machine learning, AI and ML, in just the havoc that it's reaching. And I've come up with sort of an analogy, a metaphor that I want to share with you in this video about the biases and things that we're building into these automated systems, not just in education, but in society, social media, criminal justice, you name it, and it's all getting built in there. And I'd like to share some of that thought and that metaphor with you right now in this video. All right, so just to go back on this article I wrote last year or 2 years ago, I was really kind of starting to get more concerned and more thought. A lot of cognitive load, I guess, was weighing me down about what was happening around the automation of automated learning systems. As a researcher in augmented and virtual learning environments, I worry about the process of inquiry and how I'm seeing a trend in how AI systems are answering questions for us. We're getting curated answers to questions that we haven't fully formed yet in our mind and haven't become completely aware yet in our mind. If you want to see more about that process in detail, that I have past videos about it. I like to give the example of the budding botanist and using AI systems to learn botany. I have a couple more videos about that. But today, I want to talk about AI, ML, artificial intelligence, machine learning versus human problems. And what's really sticking out in my mind about this particular issue is the picture that you see behind me here. This is a forest, but it doesn't look like a natural forest here. And this is at the essence of what's been picking at my mind, what's been gnawing at me around the issues of artificial intelligence in many systems, including education, and how we're using it to solve human problems in a not so human way, a not so natural way. At least that's what it feels like to me. And this picture kind of personifies that, kind of brings out the essence of that, because it's not really a forest. It is a scientific forestry, produced a man-made forest, and it doesn't quite seem like something you would, see in nature. So what does this mean? So we take this kind of approach, this way that we've kind of commodified the forest, the nature. We can take that one step further and kind of look at the forest instead of the trees. Now we have people. So if the commodity was lumber in the first one, and we're seeing the forest as that lumber commodity, now we're perhaps companies like Facebook and Google are seeing their users as a commodity for surplus behavioral data. And we're starting to see not the natural forest, but perhaps the standardization, the built-in way that standardizes and homogenizes all types of human behavior and categorizes it using these trained AI systems. Now, how important is this? I'd like to let the Zuck give us a little introduction about how important this particular concept is to the company of Facebook and how they run their algorithms and their systems.
In terms of fighting hate, we've built really sophisticated systems. Our goal is to identify it before anyone even sees it on the platform. And we've built AI systems and, as I mentioned, have tens of thousands of people working on safety and security with the goal of getting this stuff down so that way before people even see it. And right now, we're able to proactively identify 89% of the hate speech that we take down before I think it's even seen by other people. So, I want to do better than 89%. I'd like to get that to 99%. But we have a massive.
So this is during some congressional hearings late 2020, and Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, was getting asked about the moderation policies of Facebook, namely around political speech and hate speech. And the answer, many times, out of not just Zuckerberg of Facebook, but out of most of the people that came before Congress around, Amazon, Google, Apple, is more AI. We need more AI. I think probably one of the big issues here is growth, right? In 10 years, Facebook went from 1 user to almost 1 billion users. To keep up that growth, they need to scale, and they need AI to help them scale and keep that growth. So hate speech, moderating it to get 89% off the platform before any user even sees it is an AI versus human problem, and it's causing more problems, and it's making the users, which are really the product of Facebook, more like that forest I showed you in the beginning of this video. So to talk a little bit about what's happening with this, Wikipedia defines algorithmic bias as a systematic, repeatable error in a computer system. It creates sort of an unfair outcome, giving some privilege, and arbitrary groups get silenced. So hate speech is a relative thing. Training an AI system to do that is very, very difficult. I've made other videos about the actual people that are moderating, the humans that are moderating Facebook. There's a lot of stories around the internet about how they're being traumatized, getting PTSD about seeing humanity's worst and having to make snap-second decisions about pictures that should be on or off Facebook. Basically, becoming law experts and judging what should be shown and not shown on Facebook. But now that we're giving that over to an algorithm, an AI system, a machine learning system, and Zuckerberg and others want to automate this even further to get things off the platform. So before a human even has a chance to see it, an algorithm has sifted through it and made a snap decision about whether it should be on the platform or not. Now, taking this a step further, when I was writing that article about AI in education, I was talking about the concept of garbage in, garbage out, right? It's a very common saying in the computer science, computer programming field, where if you put bad data into a system, an algorithm, you're going to get bad data back. And the training data that's given to these systems is always flawed. It's always got biases in them, and we're seeing it come out in all types of places. So to go back to the metaphor, this kind of metaphor I pulled from a book, Seeing Like a State by James C. Scott. And in this book, James C. Scott kind of analyzes the standardization of a lot of social practices by governments. And one of them is forestry, taking forestry, the one we have a natural forest, and then we have one that's been engineered, kind of, taken on the aspect of the industrial age during the Industrial Revolution, when forest was mostly seen as a commodity for lumber, and if you needed to rebuild or respect the nature, you also used the industrial kind of mindset and replace the trees in this kind of weird fashion. And when I think about that Facebook algorithm moderating hate speech, I come back to this kind of image, because now instead of having the forest, studies were done about this actually, where they noticed that replanting the trees like this was great for reforestation, but they found that the second and third generation of plants did not do as well. The grounds are very bare in these, and forests do much better in more diversity, more types of flora, more types of plants, more types of animals and creatures habitating these forests, and it looks very messy. And that's what I hope that an online community as big as Facebook might represent: different cultures, different ideas, different points of view. That means that regulating hate speech becomes almost impossible for an algorithm or a machine learning thing to do, when the goal should be to have a flourishing ecosystem of thought and ideas. So these two ideas are in conflict, right? When we try to put that together. So put that down here. The great simplification of the forest into a one commodity machine. Now, in Facebook, that one commodity is us. It's our behavioral data, it's our behavioral surplus that then gets sold to advertisers and political campaign managers, and et cetera, et cetera. So, putting this same idea of building back up the forest for short-term means, instead of having that diverse diverse ideas, diverse ways of thinking, really goes against the long-term sustainability and health of a functioning society. In my mind, this is what's the heart of what's bothering me about this, right? So some other kind of effects and studies that are coming out. These are some either article titles or research paper titles that I've pulled and looked over since I wrote that article in the middle of 2019 that I showed at the top of the video. So Apple Card came out. They're being investigated for gender discrimination that's been built into their automatic approval systems to get an Apple Card. Racial bias found in healthcare risk algorithms. So different, perhaps, cultures and people around the world have different health, kind of statistics. And if the algorithm isn't able to get that diversity out, they've been trained to kind of lock in on certain types of ailments and other kind of symptoms, and that has found to be racially biased. COVID-19 vaccination distribution, kind of inequalities in how things are distributed. Going back to education and standardized testing and the algorithms that are created to grade not only multiple choice questions, but essays that are being graded now, and these new suite of anti-plagiarism software that is showing some bias, and the kinds of writing, the kinds of early education that some people get other than others, and that diversity of thought, diversity and creativity of writing often gets bias on it. Dutch course prohibits use of AI to detect welfare fraud, and a lot of things, governments are going back to using these algorithms to help them. I made just a video just last week about smart cities and the ability for governments to start collecting more data to kind of glean more efficiency from their cities, and they're going to rely on artificial intelligence and machine learning to do this. And of course, there's going to be some bias to fight against that as well. If you really like these ideas and you want to hear some concrete great examples, I want to recommend this book to you. I read it a few years ago. It's wonderful. It's called Weapons of Math Destruction. There's also a TED Talk by the author as well, if you want to get kind of the short version of it. But there are at least a dozen different great case studies of machine learning and algorithms that are widening inequality, social injustice, and different types of things, because we're relying on these algorithms to help us make decisions. So please check that out if you want to dig deeper into this subject. Right. So let's come back to the forest. What do we do about this situation? Well, it's not an easy problem. And it kind of goes against a lot of scale, growth, and business models that are coming about using and leveraging artificial intelligence and machine learning in the world today. The whole idea is to standardize something so it can be distributed worldwide. And so we're missing out on a lot of different, localizations, cultural aspects to different ways of distributing, collecting, and mixing information. So maybe growth is an enemy of this per se. A natural forest, of course, will take a lot longer to grow rather than planting a forest like this, sporadically letting just the trees grow. Of course, you can get more lumber out of it, in Facebook's case, more behavioral data. But there really needs to be some sort of approach to this. One interesting thing, article that I came across a little while ago, I can just share this right now. Let me bring this over here to kind of help us with, oops, that's not it. Here it is taking the idea of AI and machine learning and treating it like a bureaucracy, like its own society. And so just like we have to put humans and ideas of laws and governments through some sort of checks and balances, we should think about some sort of also some system for AI, some checks and balances between humans and AI, or AI and other AI systems, and treating it something in like that fashion. This idea is not fully fleshed out yet. It's still kind of in its infancy as far as like gaining traction as a concept, but I think there's something might be there about using this idea to help get us out of the forest that we might be going to. All right, I think I may have talked enough for now. Excuse me. My name's Eric. I'm a Learning Futurist. I will see you again in the next video. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.